Look around honestly. How many times have you watched someone else succeed and felt quiet resentment? Not hatred, but that uncomfortable awareness that they started 10 steps ahead. Wealthy families solving problems with signed checks. Experienced mentors guiding every important decision. Influential circles creating opportunities through single introductions. And then there's you. No powerful connections, no mentor clearing the path, no one standing behind you saying they believe in you. Just you, building something from absolutely nothing. Society teaches us this means disadvantage. From childhood, we hear the same advice repeated endlessly. Build your network, find mentors, never work alone, surround yourself with successful people. The message is so common that nobody questions it anymore. People simply assume more support automatically means more power. But Machiavelli would have challenged that belief immediately, because whenever the majority accepts something without questioning it, power often hides in the exact opposite direction. Machiavelli noticed the same pattern repeatedly throughout history. The person who controls a resource eventually gains influence over the person who depends on that resource. The deeper dependency becomes, the greater the influence, and eventually, influence becomes control. Consider the entrepreneur whose parents financed his first business. Most people see nothing but advantage. What they miss are the invisible strings attached to that money. Every important decision now exists beneath the shadow of expectation. Every risk requires explanation. Every failure carries someone else's investment. Their influence follows him into every decision he makes. The same pattern exists inside professional networks. People love repeating that your network is your net worth. It sounds sophisticated, but very few acknowledge the other side. Networks create obligations. Relationships create expectations. Favors create future debts. Every introduction, every opportunity creates another invisible thread connecting your future to someone else's interests. As those threads multiply, moving freely becomes increasingly difficult. The first hidden trap inside support is dependency. But the second trap is even more dangerous because most people never realize it exists. There is no paperwork, no contract, no signature. Yet it quietly shapes decisions and limits freedom across entire lifetimes. Machiavelli understood this centuries before psychology ever gave it a name. Today, we call it psychological debt. Most people think debt begins when money is borrowed. They are mistaken. The most powerful debts are emotional, social, and psychological. They begin the moment someone gives you something you could not have obtained alone. At first, it feels harmless. Someone introduces you to the right person. Someone finances your idea. Naturally, you feel grateful. But beneath that gratitude, something else, quietly, begins growing. Obligation. Modern psychology calls this the reciprocity principle. When someone gives us something, we automatically feel internal pressure to give something back. Without realizing it, we begin changing our behavior, becoming more agreeable, more reluctant to disappoint the people who helped us. If support creates dependency, and dependency creates invisible debt, then what does the absence of support actually create? Why did some of history's most formidable individuals emerge from circumstances offering them almost nothing? Modern psychology provides a fascinating answer. Human beings adapt to necessity. When support is everywhere, adaptation slows. When support disappears, adaptation accelerates. Your brain begins solving problems it never had to solve before. Awareness sharpens. Tolerance for uncertainty increases. Capability expands. Think about the human body. If someone lifts every heavy object for you, your muscles have no reason to strengthen. Growth only happens when resistance exceeds your current ability. The mind works identically. Someone who repeatedly solves problems alone develops confidence rooted in evidence. They do not believe they are capable because someone encouraged them. They believe it because they have already survived dozens of situations without anyone coming to rescue them. Psychologists call this self-efficacy, and it cannot be borrowed or inherited. Support creates dependency. Dependency creates psychological debt. Pressure creates capability. But these lessons ultimately lead to one final transformation: becoming difficult to control. Machiavelli measured power differently than most people. To him, real power was measured by one question: how difficult is it for someone else to manipulate your decisions? Every form of control requires a pressure point, something you desperately need, something you fear losing, something you cannot imagine living without. Remove the pressure point, and leverage begins disappearing. Consider someone whose identity depends entirely on other people's approval. Every decision becomes filtered through one question: what will people think? They hesitate before speaking honestly, avoid necessary risks, hide opinions that might create conflict. Approval has become a dependency, and dependency always creates leverage. This is why people who have repeatedly faced adversity alone possess a unique kind of confidence. Their confidence is not built on optimism. It is built on evidence, and evidence is far harder to manipulate than hope. When this began, you may have believed your greatest disadvantage was having no support. But this was never simply a conversation about support. It was a conversation about power. Support creates dependency. Dependency creates psychological debt. Pressure creates capability. Capability removes leverage. And when leverage disappears, something extraordinary begins emerging: sovereignty. The sovereign individual does not reject relationships or cooperation. They simply refuse to build their identity upon borrowed strength, because borrowed strength will never equal strength earned yourself. When confidence comes from capability, when security comes from adaptability, and when identity comes from self-respect instead of recognition, fear begins losing its grip. That is the unfair advantage of having zero support. Not that success becomes guaranteed or struggle disappears, but that it forces you to develop resilience, adaptability, self-reliance, and independent judgment. These are not simply survival skills. They are power traits that make you difficult to manipulate, difficult to intimidate, and ultimately impossible to control.